the experience. We're in our hour 3 of day 2 for Pride, and we've got some awesome guests. So we are actually going to have Krista coming in, who's going to be posting with me. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, it's good to see you again. I missed you.
It's the hair, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Right. And then, so actually, in this hour, we're going to be talking to somebody super awesome. Just had a book called Made in Korea. Just came out this last week. We want to welcome Jeremy Holt, please.
Hey.
It's good to see you again. Haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. I'm the face behind when you talked to Miss Jen the last time.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I'm the one who gave her all the info. So,
and I'm super excited to meet you, Jeremy. I just read Made in Korea, and I freaking love it. It's amazing.
Nice.
So I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes.
I'm excited to answer any questions and have a chat.
Awesome. So I'm going to let Krista take it over for a little bit.
Okay, great. I love chatting. When I did my interview a couple hours ago, this question was asked to me, and I'm going to ask you, Jeremy, what is your origin story?
Okay, origin story. My origin story starts in 2008. I was living in New York at the time. This was around the Wall Street crash. I was living in an apartment in the West Village that I couldn't afford. I was broke, and I decided to just stay in because I didn't have any other options. So I started writing. And this was around the time that I fell into reading comics pretty heavily. So I was reading a lot of Vertigo titles and a lot of Image titles, actually. And I started developing what I thought would be the most amazing zombie comic, not realizing that that whole genre is pretty flooded. But yeah, so I started writing then and going to conventions and networking. And I started signing up as a press person because I was writing reviews for an entertainment website for a friend of mine's site out in LA. So that's how I got to meet creators one-on-one. And yeah, just from there, I just kind of self-taught myself.
Nice. So you were going to Midtown Comics?
I was actually going to Forbidden Planet in Union Square.
Okay. I definitely have been there too. I love New York. What sorts of comics did you gravitate towards? You said that you were reading Vertigo and Image. What were some of the beginning ones where you're like, whoa, this is really cool?
So the book that got me really into reading them was, so I had went to go visit my oldest brother who lives in Connecticut, and he was actually a big comic book collector when I was a kid. And so we went to a coffee shop, and he just said, hey, do you want to read some old comics? So he gave me Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. And that book just opened my eyes to where comics are. Well, when I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is where comics are. And he said, that's like 20 years old.
Right.
So I was like, oh my God. So I went to Forbidden Planet, and I was like, what are people reading? And so I started reading Scalped and Transmet and Preacher and Young Liars. And when I read Why the Last Man, that was the series that just sparked this, I don't know, creative epiphany. And I was like, I have to do this. And so, yeah, from there, I just kind of tried to model my career after Brian came on.
Had you written stuff before, or you're like, I'm so inspired, I'm going to do this?
I hadn't written anything before. I did go to art school. I went to film school, and I was working as a sound designer at a small studio in Soho for a bit, but it just wasn't a career for me. But I had never really pursued anything writing-wise. So I did look up script formats. I found Jason Aaron's script format. I found Joshua Dysert's script format. Two people who have become friends of mine now, which is kind of awesome. And seeing how they formatted their stories and then comparing it to the actual comic pages, I started to basically deconstruct how they were working. And I basically took both their formats and made an amalgam that worked for me. And that's the format I've been using ever since.
Right. You know, the screenplays and scripts for comics are very similar in that you have to describe what's going on in each scene. When I write comics, I tend to follow like a screenplay form. So that's very cool. I love that. So Made in Korea, let's talk about this because You should be very proud. Not that I need to tell you, but this is a phenomenal comic. And I want to talk about some of the things that you're really touching on, especially with the notion of identity. I think identity, especially now that things are really starting to shift, that, you know, your comic is very much about identity, and I want you to just really talk about that, because I want to hear from you, and then I want to ask some questions regarding that.
Sure.
Obsessed with the book, by the way.
Identity is definitely a theme that runs throughout all my books, with the exception of my book Skip to the End, maybe. As a transracial adoptee, I've thought about my identity at length as far back as I can remember. Sharing an identity with my triplet brothers, I am an identical triplet, has always forced me to try to find my own path. And I didn't really explore identity as heavily as I have in the last few years. It was a long journey to unpack being Asian American, being raised by white people. Half my immediate family are white. For the first 6 or 7 years, I was writing the white male savior story, and I realized I was doing that because A, I kind of viewed myself as white, and B, I thought it was a more accessible way to attract readers. And I didn't actually find a whole lot of publishing success doing that. And then in 2017, when I came out as non-binary, I reviewed all of my work, past and present and future, and I just scrubbed all of the whiteness and infused color, because I realized I'm in this unique position to authentically speak about the experience of being a POC. And from there, it was like multiple narrative doors open that were otherwise locked. And it sort of gave me permission to weave my personal narratives into my stories.
That, and just in reading the text and reading your comic, having stories play out in Korea and in Conroe, Texas, which I was actually in Conroe yesterday.
Oh, nice.
I live in Houston, and I went to a baby shower up there. So when I saw that, when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I was probably in this subdivision. So it's so interesting, because you have these two stories playing out simultaneously in Korea and the United States. And I think that must be playing out within them, like these two narratives, and trying to make sense of that and bringing it together in a story. When you're talking about these white savior, and seeing yourself as white, like when that shift happened, how did that make you feel when you were like, I'm really not this that I thought that I was, I'm something else? I mean, how did that sort of make you feel or come about? It
was very disorienting, and in a lot of ways it still is. I mean, the Asian American diaspora is very real, and we feel on the fringe of two very specific identities, Asian and American. We don't belong to either. We're not one or the other. So initially, I think I shied away from it because I really, for a long time, didn't view myself as Asian, which is weird to think about. But I've met other Korean adoptees that have had very similar experiences. And I specifically wanted to write Made in Korea in two distinctly different locations, because I wanted to provide that feeling of the diaspora, of this character coming from a very specific place, growing up in a very different place. And I think that the heart of the story is about adoption. And I've long believed that every good AI narrative is rooted in an adoption story. I just haven't seen anyone tackle that directly. And I thought that I was in this, again, unique position to do it authentically. And I actually finished the last 2 years of high school in Texas, in Montgomery. So that's why I ended up.
Hey, I used to go out there for bike rallies every weekend. I think this is we got 3 adoptees here, so we've got different perspectives of how that definitely goes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because definitely it was really hard so I was up until I was about 9. I was in Russia and very Jewish, and then I was brought over here and adopted by the different side of my family, grandparents that didn't really know how to deal with any of that. So feeling the identity with the crisis and all that really like spoke to me. Sorry, like I absolutely loved it. I love your comic.
That's great. I mean, that's really, I want the adoption experience to be a bit more universal. I don't think it's just about Korean adoptees, even though that was it was such an industry for multiple generations in the late 20th century. So. That's wild being adopted older. That must have been an experience.
Well, I mean, this is crazy because I'm adopted too. I mean, this is just like the adoption panel, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking because because I remember yours and then we talked a little for a minute earlier and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the craziest moment. And
it's something that I was adopted from birth and my parents went through a lawyer. So I always tell everyone they paid a lot of money for me. And my brother is also adopted, but we are not blood related. And he is in prison and I'm like a criminal justice. So it's a very bizarre story. Yeah.
Like we've got every flip coin right here on one screen.
That's really interesting because for me, I found out maybe a decade ago that for the first year of my life, we were adopted at about age 1. For the first year of my life, I was by myself. So if you were to look at photos of us, my brothers are very much two peas in a pod. They like looking the same. They're both cis hetero men. And so when people look at me, sometimes they don't think we're triplets. So, but I just think that it's very interesting that because of the first year of my life, I was very much by myself. I've spent most of my life just being comfortable on my own. Like I have 2 triplet brothers, but I don't feel profoundly connected to them the way they feel connected to each other. I think that it is very interesting that the experiences infants can have that can really shape the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, when I, growing up as adoptees, at least we're always told you should be grateful. Your parents love you. And your parents loved you so much they gave you up. You're really a part of this family because they love you so much. And that, even as babies, like that's trauma. And I think people don't talk about that because they think, well, what can a baby know? Well, they know a lot. They know that they've been in this person for 9 months and have gotten used to that person, their smell, their voice, and then all of a sudden that person isn't there anymore. Absolutely. And, I think I heard a quote somewhere that adoptees are the only people who are told that they should be grateful for their trauma.
Yeah.
That's
wow.
I've heard that.
It's like and so framing adoption as sort of a traumatic event is usually never done. And when I started reading about that, I was like, that blew my mind. And then I have since found my biological parents, which that's a trip.
Yeah.
And, my mom is like in LA and she's an actress and
what?
It's crazy.
So when you met them, can you tell who you look more like? I think most adoptees, that's what they're fixated on is the resemblance.
And that's the thing, because for a long time I didn't look like anybody. Or when, people would say about my adoptive parents, oh, you have your dad's eyes, or I'm like, what?
My dad is white.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Literally said, "You look like your dad." I'm like, "My dad's German." What?
Yeah,
you're really trying here.
Yeah, I know. It's like people feel the need to say that, but when I definitely look more like my biological father, but I have my mom's personality. It is bizarre. So I mean, this really hit home for me because I have not read. You read a lot of comics where people are orphans, like their parents are dead, whether it's Peter Parker or Bruce Wayne, but having this sort of adoption narrative, that was the first time I'd really seen it in a really sort of interesting way, So thank you for sharing that. personal experience with the world. I think that it's really important, you know?
It was, it took a few years to finally lean into this, to step into some of my personal truths that I assumed that people didn't want to read about. And then I just started to learn that the more I write authentically, the more it has resonated with readers. And I think the first instance of that truly was with a graphic novel I did through Comixology Originals last summer called Virtually Yours, which is my homage to the rom-com genre. And I included some very personal life experiences that happened to me within that story. And when I was doing interviews, people asked, why did you include a domestic violence storyline into a romantic comedy? And I said, because that happened to me. And I think it's important to show that, men or, people identifying as male can be abused just like anybody else. And I think that it's a conversation worth having. And to me, Virtually Yours was this opportunity to examine relationships, romantic relationships, but specifically outside of that honeymoon bubble, because that's where most of us live. Like sometimes we'll get access to that honeymoon bubble and it's amazing, but it's fleeting at best. And I wanted to focus on what it's like to not fall in love, but what it's like to survive falling out of love. And that book, was really well received. And then I was developing and writing Made in Korea at the time, and I just kind of leaned harder into that as I pressed forward with the scripts.
I think that that's really important too, Jeremy, because, my sort of area, one of my areas of expertise is justice-involved women. And a lot of times we talk about victimization and intimate partner violence, and we're getting more into talking about how that sort of violence knows no gender, knows no color. It happens to anyone. And the notion that people who identify as male or identify as non-binary or who are gay and lesbian can also experience that, because IPV is really thought of as this heteronormative experience. And if it happens between two women, it's not that, serious. If it happens between two men, they're just duking it out. How could they even hurt each other? And it's really a serious problem, especially with people who identify as male. They don't have resources. A lot of the resources are for women.
Yeah, for me, I definitely minimized it for many years. And when I finally just was enough is enough, I remember talking about it with a friend of mine, and I described this incident where my ex-wife, I'd fallen asleep and she hit me in the face to wake me up, and I denied it for a while. I was like, wow, that didn't happen. And then I mentioned to a friend, and his instinctual response was, well, how hard can women hit?
Right.
And it's like that is like where the mentality around all of this is, and it's like it's super problematic.
Yeah.
Right. Or on the flip side, well, what did you do to make her do that? And it's like, hey, just don't hit people.
Isn't that something we're taught in what is
kindergarten?
Grade school? Thank you.
Oh yes.
That is something that we're supposed to be taught then. I've actually built a whole community out in Athens, Texas, because it happened to my brother, and they know they can call me. There's about 1,000 people who live in that town. It's 4 hours away, but every single one of them have my phone number in their phones or in their bathroom, from the community college to the Walmart bathroom. If they're ever in trouble, any of the guys there or anybody part of the the LGBTQ, they can call me, and they do.
That's amazing.
So it's gotten really rare because they know I come down and fight. Yeah. I don't just come down and take them. I come down there and I take care of it.
That's
and
awesome.
I grew up on a 2,000-acre ranch. Oh. We had buffalo, we had horses, we had chickens. Oh, chickens!
Chickens are mean.
Chickens are, they're little T-Rexes. They're mean. They're dinosaurs, and I hate them.
They are mean.
But anyways, that got me to where I am, now. I will go up there, and if it's a dude that's hitting another dude because of something, they can't control because they know who they are, I'm gonna take care of it.
Yeah,
I do.
This is something I've been exploring, and I don't touch upon it too much in Made in Korea, but a little bit. But I've just been examining toxic masculinity and the spectrum that it exists on, and I've been looking at the correlations between, say, someone like Anthony Bourdain and Dylan Roof. I see correlations because these are both white males between the ages of 25 and 55. Suicide rates are very high for that demographic. I found that very interesting. I want to know why. And what I've come to understand is that there are these false narratives being spread about masculinity, which is, Dylan Roof committed an act of violence because he was isolated from his peers. He was isolated from women specifically. Same narrative was pitched for Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris at the Columbine Massacre. And this is a narrative that keeps getting pitched. And the thing is that I don't believe that's actually true. What I see happening is that men are isolated from other men. And I remember when I was a kid in like 3rd grade, I had a best friend. And we used to say I love you to each other all the time. And we had fights and we'd make up and we'd emote. And then when you get to adolescence, then the homophobia kicks in, and then the boys are immediately emotionally separated. Right. And they're never challenged on trying to be more open emotionally. And when I moved a lot as a kid, my parents were very open to my sisters keeping in touch with friends when we'd move, but the boys were like, oh, you'll make new friends. And boys are viewed as kind of interchangeable. And when you become an adult, then you're just hanging out with other emotionally stunted men who talk about the same 3 things. And it's a profound isolation. And I think that is the commonality between someone like Bourdain, who committed suicide, and Dylan Roof, who commits the act of murder, is this isolation and not being able to connect with other males. So that's something I definitely did a ton of research on and wanted to try to explore it as best I could with Made in Korea, because there is a part of the storyline that features that.
I think that is a very important discussion to have, because I've also thought about that too. I mean, being in the criminal justice field, and people always want to talk about, school shooters and mass shooting, and, why is this happening? Is it mental illness? And to me, it's this notion of telling men that you have to be a certain way, that women need to respond to you this way. If they don't, you're losers, that you need to earn a living and provide. If you don't, you're a loser. Yeah. All of these sorts of things that we hold up as like, this is what masculinity looks like. And if you don't achieve it, you're a loser. And then that promotes such anger, such anger as a response. And because men in general are socialized to externalize their anger, that's what this violence is. Whereas women, we internalize it. We get stressed.
You shove it down until it blows up.
Yeah.
For me, I just blow it up. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to shove it down. Let's do this.
That's awesome.
Medicate. Whereas, men, if they're upset, they either fight it out with each other or go, and I think that it's something that we really need to examine, that those white middle class heteronormative gender role expectations are completely unobtainable, unrealistic, and it's causing a lot of people to do really devastating things. So
depression, anxiety, all of it. It's just
I just think the gender binary puts us in boxes, that the boxes have so many pitfalls within them, and people don't think about this, and it's in a lot of ways impossible to get out of. So for me, when realizing my gender identity, exploring that, it's this continuing exploration, has just given me the permission to just be whoever I want. I don't have to be this, I don't have to be that. Yeah. And I just wish more people could view it that way, because as you said, Krista, it's very problematic, and it is ultimately damaging.
Yeah.
Everybody assigns gender roles. They see they see that you're this gender and they expect something. So we have this big problem with my husband's family where they're like, oh, your wife makes more money than you. What kind of man are you? And it's just like, dude, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
But
who cares? None of it matters.
It's so ingrained, and it's almost as if you don't fit into those expectations, you could be invisible. Because I know that when I came out as gay, before that, people would be like, who's your boyfriend? When are you getting married? When are you having kids?
Yeah.
And then once I came out as gay, those questions stopped. It was like that part of me no longer existed. And when I would say, oh, yeah, maybe we're thinking about having kids, people would say, well, how does that work? Well, how do babies, do we have to have a birth?
Have you forgotten how this works?
Yeah, I always loved those because I would just like me and my girlfriend would be out like with family and they, like, oh, yeah, we were thinking about having children. And they're like, with who? How are you going to do that? And it's just like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a level of entitlement. It's this weird misplaced entitlement within hetero culture, I think, and it's just been frustrating. I've just had some challenging conversations with my own family about it, and I'm learning about what is actually important. Is it important that I get the support from people I tell? Sure, but I'm not doing this for them. So that has given me some strength to just be like, if you can't support this, that's totally your prerogative, but it doesn't change me. I'm going to still be me. And if you want to get on board, great. If you don't, then, we'll just be speaking a little less. Well,
they're not living your life. So, that's what's important. So many things are like blowing my mind right now. I'm really enjoying talking to you, Jeremy. Like, I want to be your friend and like hang out with you.
We all need to meet. We all need to meet in Conroe. By the way, I can't remember. Is it like, so we actually on the show after your book dropped and we were having our Tuesday live show, we were talking about your book. Me and Miss Jen were like, is it Conroe Lights? Is it Conroe-ettes? We couldn't remember what people.
I don't know, but I've heard that there's like this pretty booming crafted beer culture in Conroe.
Oh yeah, it's huge. There's two breweries in Houston. They actually, I think St. Arnold's is down here, right? Yeah. And there's another one I can't remember, and there's also another one towards San Antonio that's actually owned by Jensen Ackles from
Whoa, really?
Nashville. He's down here all the time. Both of the main cast from there were from Texas, and they're down here all the time because they have houses. And they do, like, if you come down here to even in spring or where we're at towards the Woodlands, they have certain little bars that have a nice, hi.
She la-di-da.
But you can get all the craft beers that you want on tap most of the time from the bar. It's actually really fun. Me and my brother do it all the time where we're like, oh, let's go try what craft beers they have at this bar. Hey.
Yeah, actually my high school reunion, this is going to date me, but my high school reunion was this past weekend, my 20th.
Oh my God.
And it was in Montgomery. I wasn't going to go, even though I kind of wanted to, because I love movies about high school reunions, but I think the reality of a high school reunion is not as great.
I had my 10th one a couple years back, and when I was in high school, I actually had leukemia, so everybody thought I was dead.
Oh, wow.
So we had our 10-year a few years back, and I walked in with my best friend who had left for the Marines and come back, and everybody had written us off. They thought I was dead. They thought he was, still over there. So we walk in, and they have this video playing of In Memoriam from the Woodland High School.
Oh, my God.
And then my friend starts elbowing me, and I'm like, dude, what do you want? And I look over. There's me. And I'm like, I stand up on a chair. By then, I'd been drinking.
Right.
And I was like, yo. Not dead. I got tackled.
That's amazing.
To the ground, and I was like, "All of you thought I was dead. I've been here the whole time."
To be fair, that's the best way to go back to a reunion. That's better than saying, "Oh, I have this high-time job." It's like, "Hey, bitches, I'm still alive."
Yeah,
right.
And now everybody wants to talk to you.
Nobody's talking to me.
Popular girl in the room.
Well, they still didn't like me.
I'm gonna date myself. high school reunion is coming up in October, and it's my 30th.
Ooh.
Nice.
So, and I'm actually one of those people where I went to high school with, I went to a private school, Catholic school my whole life. So I went to school with these people from first grade to senior in high school. I graduated with 24 girls in my class. So we're all like sisters. So we go back and we immediately revert to smoking and drinking. It's just this bizarre thing, but it's really fun.
That's awesome.
That's pretty much what we did, because I graduated with a class of 1,016 of us.
Wow.
That's like a town.
Wait, what high school did you go to?
The Woodlands Senior Campus.
Okay, yeah. I actually I was in the Woodlands for 2 years, 2006 to 2008. I was working as a genius at the Apple Store at the Woodlands Mall.
Okay, so I was actually class of 2008, and we spent every weekend smoking behind the mall and drinking behind the mall.
That's
so
awesome.
I might have seen you.
Maybe.
I don't know. And then I worked at GameStop in the mall, so.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
GameStop.
It's how, worlds collide.
It's the bubble. It's the bubble.
Yeah.
That's what they call the Woodlands, is the bubble where like nobody leaves because everything is there. And it's crazy because I came from a small town that nobody leaves. I left a small town and came to the bubble. And yeah, I never want to leave the bubble. I love it. I leave for vacations, but then I come back.
I'm in the process of moving, actually, so like I'm kind of stressed. I hate moving.
Where are you moving?
So I've been in Vermont for a while, but I'm actually moving back to New York City in a few weeks.
Staying in the cold. I'm so sorry. I give you the warm hug. I hope you feel it.
I love New York City. I think that's it's fun to visit.
Fun to visit.
There, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I was there for 5 years before I moved to Vermont, so it is gonna be
okay.
a transition to go back. But I kind of feel like my life is passing me by, and I got this pretty good job
Nice.
in Manhattan. So I have a lead on an apartment, which I think I should be closing on pretty soon. So it's all moving very quickly. But yeah, so I'm gonna need to start throwing stuff out, packing up, donating.
Whenever you're feeling a little overwhelmed, I send you the smell of boudin balls.
Okay.
You smell it. Do you feel it? Is
Yeah.
it entering your soul?
Boiled crawfish. I wanna ask you about, if I could, writing for Image, because that would be like my dream. Do you have any advice to give people about sort of breaking into the comic book industry, and like what would you tell them or suggest that they do?
Okay, so Image was my dream back in 2008. So it's taken me over 12 years to get here. And even this book was delayed by 2 years. So I've reread Made in Korea #1 1,000 times over. And before it was released, I was like, this is going to bomb. No one's going to like this. It's not that good. The hook is pretty weak. Yeah, I'd read it too much. And so the reviews that are coming in are quite surprising. But for me, what I would tell people is it is absolutely paramount to move your goalposts. So for a very long time, my goalpost was to write full time. When that didn't happen, I quit. I've quit multiple times. And the only thing you can't do is quit, because if you do, then someone's going to take your dream job. So move the goalpost, alter it however you have to. So for me, it was just continuing to enjoy writing. And I didn't even have to write every day. Like that was another goalpost I moved, where I was thinking, if I didn't write every day, I'm not a writer. But just enjoy the work, weave in your personal narratives, get as personal as possible, fictionalize it to make yourself more comfortable if you have to. But that kind of stuff is what readers and editors will never overlook. As far as specifically getting in with Image, I have heard so many different stories, and every single one is different, and I've tried all of them. So I've heard stuff like, okay, you need to email them on a specific day at a specific time. You can't have more than one sentence, and the JPEGs have to be embedded in the email, not attached. Or find the publisher's phone number, call him up until he says yes. Someone did that for you. Or get a big name creator to hype you up did that didn't work. And for me, it was, I happened to know someone at the time who was a production artist at Image. And he has been a huge proponent of my work for a long time. And he was the first one who read it and said, I'm going to send this along to Marla Isaac. And I was like, who's Marla Isaac? Because as far as I knew, Eric Stevenson was the only one reading pitches. That's what I was told for years. And then I find out, no, actually, Eric has an assistant. I said, does Marla look at pitches? Yeah. What? So he gave it to Marla, and Marla is really, I give her a lot of credit because she was the one who championed Made in Korea. But that even took, I don't know, over a year. And at one point, I even said to Marla, can we just call it? Can we just call the time of death? Because I need to move on with my life. So, and she came through within a week of that email. And and my way in is unlike anything I've heard before. So I think that there's a lot of different ways. I think you just have to keep doing it. And something that Marla said to me, which I think is very insightful, is when you get a rejection, do not think that the publisher is stamping you as a failure. It's actually the opposite of that, where they like it enough to respond to you. Mm-hmm. If they like it enough, it means that you're now on their radar. And maybe what you pitched just wasn't exactly what they were looking for. Right. And I've pitched, I don't know, I have I stopped counting rejection letters after 50, but specifically with Image, what it became clear to me was that Made in Korea was a culmination of trial and error, refinement of my process and my work to the point when I submitted that it was undeniably good. But you can't really do that overnight. You can't do that with your first book out. Like, you really have to hone the craft, get better, revise. You got to get comfortable with revisions, and eventually people will take notice.
So was it accepted in 2018, but it's just now in it, and it's really sort of a timely release now. What did you say? I mean, do you want to speak a little bit about how the timing is actually a little more, it's better than it probably would have?
100% better. So it got greenlit in October of 2018. I finished scripting it on Christmas Eve of 2019. My co-creator, George, they had received work from another publisher when we got the green light. So George was gone for a year. So I just kept writing it in the meantime. And when Parasite won for Best Picture in 2020, that was really exciting. That to me was an indicator of what direction Hollywood was kind of looking towards. And I was kind of, the only good thing from the pandemic was my book got delayed by an additional year. So when, Lee Isaac Chung and Chloe Zhao are getting recognized and nominated, it was even more Asian representation, including actors, because, every single actor in Parasite didn't get nominated, which is a crime. Yes. Films that have been heralded as amazing works like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which was like decades before, no actor in those films were nominated. Right. So the fact that actors are not only getting nominated and winning, this was just absolute perfect timing. And I think if this book had come out a year earlier, I don't think it would have had the same impact.
Right. No, it's great. And it's just so serendipitous. It's like you just need to let the universe have things fall the way that they fall. Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit about science fiction, because this is definitely, you've got an AI component going on, very science fiction. There is some, I have to tell you, when I look at the cover, it makes me think of John Carpenter's They Live.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
But horror is totally another topic, which both Jenna and I totally love.
we were looking at all her sign stuff that she had. She's signed Hellraiser, and I almost started crying. Okay.
So science fiction. Tell me some of your inspirations. Who are your favorite authors? What have you liked to read that just either made you start thinking in this direction of this sort of narrative? Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I don't read a lot of science fiction. I think I watch a decent amount. Spielberg has definitely always been in the forefront of my brain. Minority Reports, AI were influences, but it's really honestly been Spike Jonze's work and Alex Garland's work that has been the biggest influence. So films like Spike Jonze's Her, Alex Garland's Ex Machina, including Devs, which was the Hulu original series, to me were huge influences. And also Neil Blomkamp of District 9 and Chappie and Elysium. So I wanted to try to sort of take on an AI narrative, which is my favorite of that genre, but it was really daunting because I wanted to tell something that people hadn't seen before. And so when I came across the concept of AI through the lens of adoption, it was important to me that I wanted to write a story set in a future, but we are at the precipice of a massive downturn. So, and I think that that's how life really is for us. The future isn't going to hit us all at once. We're not going to suddenly have flying cars and hoverboards. It's a gradual thing where generations later, when we're all gone, are going to look back and go, wow. So for me, I didn't want to there is a dystopian feeling to the story with the absence of childbirth, but I didn't want to set it in this post-apocalyptic world, because to me that I have to suspend disbelief, because my questions are how do we get there? How long, what's the time frame? And when the story's 2230, it's
right.
I don't care. So for me, I wanted to just show that this is still a relatable world, but there are little things that are different. And I took a huge cue from Her in the sense that this is a futuristic LA where Spike Jonze did a very clever and smart move with his costume designer to have the clothes speak about the future these characters are living in, about having high-waisted pants. Something as simple as that feels a little otherworldly, but it doesn't feel completely alien. So I wanted to do that with the story, and I think reviewers were surprised that it's not this doom and gloom. Right. I wanted to make it relatable.
So we talked about, how this story really touches on identity, representation. But as you're talking about this, there's also really sort of a commentary on family and what that looks like and how it could look. And you're sort of, because when I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, Jessie, she comes in this box. Does she age? What happens? Why is she fully this particular age? Why is it so important for these people to have children and this type of child? So those were the questions I was having. Did you have any sort of commentary on family as you were writing this, or was that just sort of the unit that you thought would be the best way to talk about this? I mean, we talked about adoption, but there's a bigger family.
I think it's connect adoption to the family component. I chose a child between the ages. I think in my mind, Wookjin Industries produces children between the ages of, I think, 7 and 10. I wanted them specifically to be children because adoption is often viewed through the lens of children, not adults. So, and also it saves room for another narrative thread about there are these children proxies, but then I also am exploring adult proxies, which will come later in the series. But specifically, these kids do not age. They act within a specific parameter of their age. And to me, it's also this kind of knee-jerk reaction from the point of view of consumerism. So I wanted to explore this kind of quick fix that's happening that right now is good. It's working. People are feeling satisfied. But if George and I get to tell more of this story, and we want to do two more arcs, I want to explore body modification more harder on the sci-fi tech angle. I want to explore because I think just like any products we have, we eventually discard them. And to me, these proxies, they're going to go that route eventually. And what does that look like?
Right.
So yeah, and it was challenging to try not to explain all of that because I didn't really want to get too hard into the hard science of it, because it's more about the characterization and character arcs than it is about the tech. But I'm hoping, because I have these 3-page backup stories in each issue, that it kind of further explores the world and the life of proxies in other families. So yeah.
That's really interesting because, when now we would never think of like, oh, I can't take this kid anymore. I'm just going to trash it and put it out on the,
Yeah.
I can't just take it to, the junkyard and have it crushed.
Yeah.
So it definitely also speaks to this notion of attachment and what you can and cannot be attached to. This is fascinating.
And I also wanted to view different families with these backup stories and how these proxies are treated. And I told the 6 artists that I enlisted, these are the parameters you have to work within, but tell your story of this proxy child and what they're going through. And to me, that was based on a college course that I audited. I work in a college town, and there was a guest speaker that came to the campus to speak about AI specifically within the toy industry. And so I listened to this really fascinating discussion about Mattel designing these Barbies that had some basic AI built into them. The consumer, the user, the child could speak to their Barbie, and the Barbie would respond with a various set of voice prompts. What Mattel was looking at from a legal conflict was that the conversations were being recorded and uploaded to a cloud. But who manages the data? Who owns the data? And what they were finding was the data was revealing child abuse and neglect. And so, there's a lot of technology that's advancing at these accelerated rates, but nobody's looking at the big picture. And I think the Google search engine is a very prime example of that. Like, it was a good idea, but tailoring using some basic AI on your search creates biases within your town, within your home. So that's something that I wanted to explore a bit. So.
That's fascinating. And
that kind of reminds me of in the 90s, wasn't Furby? Furbies were, they were recording, those were creepy. Yeah. Was recording the conversations too and saying weird things, right? Like that was something that was happening in the US, I think, at the time.
I think so.
I feel like they did a really big legal battle for a while, and that's why they had to pretty much pull Furbies from shelves for a while. I think that's what was happening, and now it feels weird that they're doing it again.
Yeah, like I think that it's going to be interesting to explore the idea of these very realistic synthetic children at some point are going to be viewed as products. And I was reminded of my training at Apple. I went to Cupertino in California to get trained for, it was like an intensive 6-week course. And one of the projects we had to do was write about some sort of store operating protocol in a creative way. So somebody in my group wrote about the end of life of a machine, but told through the console logs of that computer. So it was like this running diary of this computer's thoughts about,
oh, wow.
Hey, I've been dropped off. I need this fixed. I'm not feeling well. My fan's not spinning. Fan gets fixed. I'm excited to go home. And then sits on the shelf for 30 days. Oh no, like they've slapped a sticker on me. They've called my owner. My owner's not picking up. And after like 180 days, the computer gets thrown to be recycled. Oh. And to me, it was like so amazing because it was just humanizing a computer. And that has stuck with me, and that is something I absolutely want to explore in subsequent issues.
I think that's fascinating. Yeah. And then also I think of the notion of if these are products and if it is not somebody's biological progeny, would it be easier for them to abuse it? Like physically abuse them, just like you would see in, family situations now.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, not abuse is not awesome, but like all of
the concept
all of the things that could possibly be explored. That's amazing. Jenna, I feel like I've hogged this whole situation.
Oh no, it's totally cool.
Do you have any questions? Do you have questions for Jeremy?
Yes, so we are. We only have a few minutes left. We wanted to know: is there any upcoming projects you want to talk about, or anything that you can talk about coming up in the future? You want us to keep an eye out?
There's nothing I can give too many details about now, but I am excited to say that I will have my first prose novel published probably in the winter, if not early 2022. So
awesome.
I'm excited about that.
That's going to be super awesome. And where can everybody find you to follow you and find
very easy. Just Jeremy Holt Books across all social media, and my website is jeremyholtbooks.com.
Okay, now I'm going to rapid fire some nerdy questions. Are you ready?
Yep.
What is your favorite indie comic that you're reading right now?
I'm not reading comics right now. I don't have one.
You don't have one right now?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Is there any like TV shows or any like books that you're really into right now?
I'm mildly obsessed with Michelle Zauner's memoir, Crying in H Mart. She's the lead singer of Japanese Breakfast, which is a band that I love. And I was really obsessed with the animated anime series Agretsuko.
I've been reading the comics from Oni Press on that. It's so cool to see.
Oh, I didn't know they were doing comics.
Yeah, they just started their third arc on it. So the first arc just has come out on trade. The second arc is coming out in trade very soon. And the third one, they just had the second issue release. And it's really cool to see it go even further from behind the scenes. And then they also had the app game that had little mini episodes for in between each episode too.
Oh, fun.
So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to really see that. And then all the webtoons that they had that came out before the show got picked up by Netflix. It's really fun. I'm really deep in the universe. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Love it too. So are you really big into any video games, or is there any other like animes or like mangas you might be doing right now?
No. My two triple brothers have finally got me into playing Fortnite with their friends, which I do occasionally. And my brother, one of my triple brothers works for Epic Games, so.
Okay, dope.
Oh, nice.
Get a little bit of everything in here.
Yeah, and that's about it, I think. I've been obsessed with Phoebe Bridgers' music. I listen to Nirvana every day, which is a little weird. And yeah, that's about it.
So you're kind of like into like the classic, almost like punk scene to it?
Yeah, when I was writing this novel, Skip to the End, which is a fictionalized version of the band, and the concept is music as a form of time travel. And I wanted to explore addiction and loss.
I love it.
And I fictionalized the band Nirvana. So I was heavily obsessed with the band, and I was obsessed with the Pacific Northwest DIY punk scene of the 80s and early 90s. And I love anything that Sub Pop puts out musically. And so I did a deep dive into that stuff years ago, and I just haven't let go.
Nice. I've actually I just picked up a nice punk band called Meet Me at the Altar Garden, where they have a chick as the front singer in the punk band, and I love it so much. She has these pink dreads, and I'm obsessed with it right now.
That's awesome. Actually, the Linda Lindas I'm obsessed with.
Who?
The Linda Lindas. Have you heard about them? They're
no, but I'm writing it down right now.
Okay, so they're all like 10 or 12. They did this punk song at the Los Angeles Public Library called "You're a Racist," or talking about boys who are racist, and then it went viral. They signed with Epitaph. They were on one of the late shows this past week. So it's like, and it's three girls who just sing punk music, and they've opened for Bikini Kill. I mean, it's incredible. So I'm mildly obsessed with their music too.
So we'll definitely have to like trade music, and then for like the whole like early punk scene, you need to get with Kyle because he knows he blows my mind with some of the like Midwest early like grunge that he has. It's so amazing. All right, did you have any quick questions for him at all?
No, I just have to say I really enjoyed talking. I was nervous because I don't do a lot of interviews of famous people. But,
you're an amazing interviewer, by the way.
Oh, thank you. This is actually the first time I've done something like this, so maybe this might be,
definitely
another career for me. I just like to talk, I guess.
We gotta do more panels like this where it's just like the three of us, where we just sort of like talk about everything. I think we had so much fun.
We covered a lot. We covered identity, adoption, like everything. So
yes,
this was.
We even covered music. So I actually asked you last time that you were on with Miss Jen how you see when you're writing. Do you see like a soundtrack in your head, or do you like hear the music that you want to hear when people are reading it?
I actually play a lot of music when I'm writing. I actually create playlists for the characters because I feel like if I know what music they're listening to, I can write about them more easily. But for music, I tend to I'll listen to one song on loop, which I had to look up if it was like maybe the beginning of a mental disorder, because I can literally, with lyrics, I can listen to a song on loop for like 8 hours, which I did when I was writing Skip to the End. But it becomes background noise for me. So but I definitely think about music a lot when I'm writing.
That's
it gets me in the headspace really quickly.
I don't know if you're familiar with Rob Guillory's work.
Yeah.
He's awesome. I love him. He's so nice. And he actually had somebody offered to do sort of a soundtrack to Farmhand. So you can get on his website, and there is it's like instrumental music, but it's very cool. And you know that comic is like phenomenal.
Yes.
Chew is one of my favorites.
I love Chew.
But yeah, get on his website because he actually has like a CD. So that might be something you should think about doing too.
Yeah, actually with Skip to the End, I was going to commission somebody to do the one song. The song is called Skip to the End. I had a friend of mine from college who's a musician write the lyrics for it. Nice. In fact, the title was going to be String Theory because it kind of explores multiverses. But then I said I needed this song that evokes Nirvana, and he wrote it in a day, and he called it Skip to the End. I said, that's the title of the book.
Nice.
So I was going to commission a guy to record, sing, and play all the music, but I didn't have the money. So maybe someday.
Someday.
Yes. Well, we'll definitely have to try and do a meetup down here where it's just the three of us. We go get some good old Creole food and just kind of like talk about music and talk about all of the stuff. So
if you're ever in Texas, definitely.
Yeah, my parents are still there. So, now that traveling is safe, I think I'll probably be heading there around Christmas time.
Good.
Yay.
And you have more friends to visit now.
I can't wait. I can't wait, especially since we can all just meet up at Space Cadets because they have some of the best pizza in the Woodlands now. We have, there's a pizzeria they opened up last January. It's called Marini's, and he makes everything in-house. Like they built a kitchen out of one of the back rooms. And it's called Marini's. This is his second location. It's a smaller location. He does have a sit-down restaurant location. And he's super awesome. Me and his wife swap recipes, but they won't give me what kind of cheese they use. Now let me tell you my theory really quick. So what they have, and I'm seeing it in my head, they have this magic door in this back room where they open it, and it's a land made out of cheese, and they just reach in for the best cheese and they put it on the pizza, and then you're addicted to the pizza.
That tracks.
And that's the best way to end this. So I'm have to let you guys go because I think next we're gonna have Andy and Jose. So thank you guys so much for coming in. It was super great. Love meeting you guys. It's super awesome. I'm always behind the scene. I get to see your faces this time. You get to see mine.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.